Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. This story is about an adventurer who dared to defy the gods, as we see him chewing away on a minotaur's corpse. Even though his arm is all broken and torn to pieces, he continued eating. After a bit, his wounds begin to regenerate. He ends up gaining the skill called Roar of Terror, and the skill Battle Axe Proficiency. He lets out that same roar, which alerted the other monsters. We learn that within the records of a nobleman, a chilling inscription warrants the consumption of a monster's flesh as an act of grave transgression against the natural order. The monsters begin walking towards him, and we learn that to partake of a monster's essence is to invite the insidious corruption of their magic into one's mortal shell. As the foul magic ensnares the human-minded body, the very first signs of corruption is an overwhelming sense of exhilaration, and a surge of unnatural strength. Then comes the second harbinger of the transformation, the onset of debilitating status ailments such as a crippling headache, and waves of nausea. He starts talking about how if he ever makes it out alive, he swears he'll find those bastards, and the third and final stage of the corruption is a grim but glorious struggle to their death. The man says that he is determined to have his vengeance. The alternative is to succumb entirely to the encroaching darkness, and become a monster themselves. As we see the man desperately struggling, fighting them off, and in between every attack he's taking bites and continuing until he lets out one more primal howl, and then he's left with a single monster. What stands before him is a giant basilisk. He starts eating one of the wolf's heads, gaining its skills, and leaps directly up towards the monster. Then lightning begins to channel around the man, and he activates it on the basilisk, zapping it. He eats it as well, gaining its skill, and he continues. This cycle is endless, of him killing, consuming, and pushing forward. He doesn't know how long he's been stuck here. As he is slowly wobbling forward, he's determined to still make it. But when he looks up, thinking that he's almost out, instead what he is greeted by is a net of monsters. And he says this shit isn't enough, because he's gonna survive no matter what. It takes us to a frontier city named Verona. This territory is riddled with countless dungeons, and is home to a place known as the Noxious Labyrinth. The eerie fog that fills this labyrinth slowly drains the adventurer's stats with every passing second. While most adventurers avoid this labyrinth like the plague, he comes and goes like it's his own home, giving him the nickname of Dirty Forager. We see him smiling, saying this is nice, and there's plenty of them to pick today as well, as he is in the 6th floor of the dungeon. These are plants that grow specifically in this dungeon called blightweed. It's what keeps his pockets full. He says he shouldn't go overboard today and just take what he needs, and this should last him at least 3 days. He hears some rats and turns, seeing them right beside him. He says they are called plague rats. He starts making a run towards them, and he explains that many monsters in this labyrinth use poison or poison gas in their attacks. It's partly the reason why adventurers steer clear of this place. But that isn't the case for him, as he leaps straight through the fog, and cleaves the plague rat in two. He then follows it up, instantly killing another, with 2 more leaping at him. He swings diagonally, dealing with the first one like he had a baseball bat, and then the last one jumps onto his arm. As it starts biting into him, somebody casts fireball behind him and explodes the rat in front of him. As it starts to light a blaze, he watches the fire, and we hear some adventurers approaching him saying that was totally off the mark. One of them says that's why he told him to get closer before casting. The man says that these are some friendly faces from the Adventurers Guild. We finally learn that the man's name is Rudd. The men say that it seems like he could have used a hand there, and Rudd thanks them, but says a heads up before the cast would have been nice. The mage says that he heard him shout the spell though. The lardass tells them all that there is really a blightweed cluster here, and they get excited, saying that's what they like to hear. Rudd realizes it now, asking if they were just following him around to find his spot. The mage asks why they would ever do that, as they're just trying to make a living in this labyrinth, and they saw him and decided to help out. The least he could do is say thanks, calling him an asshole. The swordsman looks like he's ready for a fight, the lardass looks like he's ready for a delight, and I can't think of a bar for the mage. Rudd realizes that he can't fight all 3 of them, and holds himself back, apologizing for doubting them, and then he thanks them for their help, even though he really didn't want to. Back inside the city of Verona, he heads to the Golden Hearth, which is also his residence. He gets thrown onto the floor, and some men say that he stinks so bad it's damn near killing their appetite, and they want to explain it to him since he doesn't get it. The most important thing for an adventurer is having powerful skills to slay monsters. But the only thing that he has is that garbage-ass status immunity passive, and they can't believe he calls himself an adventurer. In what world is status immunity garbage? That logic makes no sense. We learn more about his status immunity, and how it is his unique ability. It's useful for exploring locations like the Noxious Labyrinth, but is completely useless in actual combat against monsters, because without any combat skills, no party wanted his service, so he was left to scavenge for items on the upper floors of the labyrinth, earning himself the nickname of the Dirty Forager. In other words, he's a garbage adventurer, with a garbage scale in terms of combat power. The sad reality is he can barely handle a few rats, and he wonders if he's just gonna live and die pathetically like this, as he curls up in his bed, depressed and wishing for more. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, he says that he's got to find another cluster before the harvest runs out from yesterday. But he says that it seems a little busier than usual, and he asks the receptionist if a big job came in. She says that the news is that a new labyrinth has been discovered. He's surprised, and says that these dungeons are a gold mine for adventurers, filled with valuable loot and magic items, and that's what has everybody all hyped up. She also says about the poisonous herb he always brings in. Effective today, the price has been dropped by 70 gold. Rudd can't believe it, and starts asking her what happened. He says that the Noxious Labyrinth isn't actually that popular, and with everyone set to delve into the new one, the demand has plummeted. He says there's no way, asking how the supply would just drop just because of a new labyrinth. Rudd says that he wants to explore the new labyrinth too, and he wants to know where it spawned. She says the new dungeon is also in the Avalio Mountains, and it's out of his league. He asks what she means, and she says that he has to be a D rank or higher to enter the Avalio Mountains. Seeing as he has only an E rank, he doesn't qualify. He grits his teeth, and says that he has to get into the labyrinth, asking if there's anything he can do. She says that rules are rules, sadly, and lets out a sigh. Besides, he'd probably just get himself killed in there anyways. He tries to tell her that's not true, and a man approaches him, saying that if he's that desperate to go, he should consider his offer, asking him if he would like to join his party as a porter. And he smiles at Rudd. It jumps to a carriage riding down the road, and inside we see Rudd, and the man who offered him to be a porter, and the rest of the party. The guy says that he's really glad they ran into him. It's been difficult to find someone to carry the loot they get from the new dungeon. Rudd though says that's just a given, all the adventurers from the guild are going to be swarming the new area, so of course finding a porter was hard. The mage says that she gets it, but still, wonders if he really had to pick the Dirty Forager. The other man in the party says seriously, anyone who'd be mildly useful would have been better. The leader says not to be so harsh on him, he's been an adventurer for a while now, and it should be better than a complete newbie, and he says that it's time for some proper introductions. He introduces himself as Vale, leader of the Crimson Blade. Then there is Sasha, and Rick, and all three of them are D rank adventurers. Rudd introduces himself as well, saying that he's only an E rank, and it's nice to meet them all. Vale says that before they go in he'd like to see what he's capable of, asking to see his guild card. Rudd says sure, and then pulls it out, and opens it for him, and it displays his stats, his level, and everything, and his skills included. Vale says that it's surprising to see that he could use fire magic. Rudd says it's too weak to use in battle, but it's just enough to provide light in dark places, or for cooking. Vale laughs, saying that that should be more than enough, and welcomes him to the party. As they continue forward, we see Sasha, Rick, and Vale all looking really excitedly, as they have finally arrived, as this door will now take them to the newly discovered labyrinth, the Avalio Labyrinth. Sasha asks if they beat everyone to the punch, and Rick says they need to hurry up and explore. They enter the door, but on the inside what they see is nothing but adventurers all the way throughout, and they say this place is already packed. They see people picking blightweed, and people fighting goblins on the other side, and then there's treasure already being sorted. Sasha can't believe it, saying that this place is absolutely cluttered with adventurers, and it sucks. Vale says that the first floor has probably been thoroughly run through like Bonnie Blue, and Sasha says beat everybody to the punch my ass. Rick reminds her she was the one who said that, but they should dive deeper at the lower portion with less people. She says that sounds like a plan, and Rudd says that the labyrinth was recently found, so they should map out the first floor before heading down. Sasha says they didn't ask for the porter's opinions, and Rick laughs, saying that's why he's still just an E rank even at that old age. Vale tells them to both cut it out, as he didn't mean anything malicious by it, but they are still trying to figure out what to do with the labyrinth. With that said, he agrees they need to head deeper, as staying here won't get a single item, and they head straight towards the stairs. Eventually, they make their way down to the 4th floor, and we see a wolf leaping in at them. Rudd looks a little taken aback, but Rick comes in killing it, telling Rudd not to let these trash mobs scare him. Sasha instantly kills one with her lightning as well, Then Vale cuts one in half. Blood flies everywhere, and Rudd realizes that they are strong, but his limbs just won't move. The final wolf falls onto the ground, and Vale sheathes his blade, letting out a sigh, and Sasha says it's a good thing they came down, as they now actually got loot, and it's nice not having to compete with other parties. Vale says the monsters aren't too strong, and the treasures aren't too bad either. Rick yells at Rudd, telling him to make sure that he loots and stashes the monsters he's slain, asking if he understands. Rudd says the ones that he's killed are too damaged to get anything useful from, and the magic crystals are probably all broken. Rick asks how he knows they're not intact, saying that he shouldn't even think about slacking off, and double check it. He says that he's not going to let the magic crystals get to him, and he's going to have to use it. Rudd really doesn't want to, because judging by how Rick killed his monsters, there's definitely nothing left, but he holds himself back, saying he'll recover them. He walks over to one bleeding out everywhere, and he says that because he tore it to shreds there are guts and blood everywhere. He starts to use his fire magic, and says maybe burning it might make it better. Rick laughs at him using his fire magic, asking if he wants some salt and pepper to go with it, and he says that they've probably explored enough, and he's getting hungry, as even monster meat is looking good to him. Sasha says that's nasty as hell, as adventurers are forbidden from consuming monster flesh. If corrupted energy enters their body, there's no telling what might happen. He says that he was just kidding with her, as they can gorge themselves from the payout after this. They start to hear a blood-curdling roar, and it's loud enough to start shocking all of their eardrums, followed by its very heavy footsteps. We see one of its hoofs, and they say this can't be right, asking what the hell a minotaur is doing here, as it is a B-rank monster in the early floors, which makes no sense. It starts stomping towards them, and Rick and Sasha say this is bad. There's no way they can take it down even if they attack together, asking what to do. Vale says that they'll have to use their items, telling Rudd to throw in the backpack, and he needs to keep an eye on the monster while he takes it out, saying that he has to do this. Rudd says of course, saying that he's got it, and asks him what he has in mind. Vale smiles, saying that he has a really good plan, it's his trump. He raises his sword, and slashes down across Rudd's back. Blood begins flying out, and he yells, telling Sasha and Rick to do it. Rick throws his axe forward, using his skill called Warrior's Inspiration, which draws the monster's aggro to either a person or weapon. It lands right beside Rudd, and Sasha casts haste, which is double the speed of the targets, which is her, Rick, and Vale. Rudd realizes that they were going to ditch him from the very start, and Vale says of course, who else wants to tag along with such a loser like himself? Rudd can't believe that they would leave him to die like this, and they run away, telling him to keep it busy for them. He calls them sons of bitches, saying that he'll get his revenge. He starts screaming at them, frustrated because there's nothing he can do. The Minotaur walks over, raising his axe high, and Rudd looks up at it, meeting its gaze, before it slams down, sending him flying into the air. He eventually lands nearby, and says that luckily it missed, and he maybe has a chance after all, but he tells himself to not kid himself, as this is going to be the end, because it's charging directly at him, and it hits him directly with its shoulder, sending him straight through the wall. The wall behind him begins to crack, and the Minotaur goes all the way through it. The Minotaur then realizes it made a mistake, as they begin falling into a pit that was right on the other side of the wall, falling all the way down to the bottom. Rudd, barely conscious, his blood pouring out everywhere, says that he can't believe he's still alive, and he looks to his side, realizing that the Minotaur had softened his fall, even though his arm and legs are all broken. He says that it's only a matter of time before he dies, even if by some miracle no other monsters show up, he'll bleed to death, and that he's so hungry, wondering if there's anything to eat. He thinks about the Minotaur as a snack, but realizes that he shouldn't even joke about it, as he knows what will happen if he consumes a monster's flesh. He decides to succumb to his fate, saying that it's been such a miserable life, and he recalls someone telling him when he was younger, no matter how hard or unbearable things get, that he must never give up. He then starts ripping into the Minotaur, eating its flesh, and feeding himself. And we already know what will happen because of this. Consuming a monster's flesh will slowly transform a human into a monster, and it's a fate worse than death by poison, or dying through other means. We see his eyes have gone completely mad, as he is digging deeper into it, his arms still all sorts of fucked up, and he says driven by starvation, and an uncontrollable thirst for blood, Rudd would end up doing the unthinkable, but little did he know of the unexpected outcome that would soon follow. Deeper into the dungeon, we see a bunch of glowing eyes, as they are all bats. Rudd slowly wobbles forward, carrying the axe, and his eyes seem to be completely devoid of reasoning, as if he has turned into a beast. The bats start to fly at him, and he activates the skill Roar of Terror, which he stole from the Minotaur. The bats start to get ripped apart by the actual attack, and they die on the spot. More bats begin flying in, and then Rudd uses the second skill from the Minotaur, Enhanced Strength, which just as the name suggests temporarily enhances his strength. He tightens his grip on the axe, and swings forward, turning all the bats in front of him into actual chunks. He grabs some of their limbs off the floor, and begins gnawing at them, and now he has their ability of echolocation, and he uses it. He begins scanning for the surrounding life forms. What he sees is a serpent, a wolf, and this weird eyeball creature, as well as another minotaur. He hears them getting closer, and he says that he guesses that it is a real party now. The only question is if they really think that he'll let them eat him, because that's what he's gonna do to them. We see a monster's arm get sent flying, and Rudd screaming as well. Also, that is definitely no minotaur. What the hell is that? He even kills the eyeball monster, and he says that the battle axe feels like an extension of his body now, and he can simply sense the monsters through magical signatures without seeing them, as he's effortlessly ripping apart everything in front of him. As he starts putting one of the eyeballs in his mouth, he chomps down at it, and he says that with every single monster he eats, he feels himself getting stronger and stronger. As his wounds regenerate, he says that his body is surging with more power than he's ever had before. Even more monsters begin charging at him, and he looks as if he's enjoying every moment of this. As he finally exits the door of the labyrinth, and sunlight begins to beam down on him, instantly, he feels so relaxed, and he drops the axe onto the floor, saying that he actually made it out, and he starts letting out one hell of a scream, saying that he actually survived. Back at the Adventurers Guild, we see a bunch of the members talking about something, and Sasha, Rick, and Vale are standing before an old man trying to explain their case. He says after hearing their report, he called back all adventurers who delved into the new labyrinth, and only their party member Rudd hasn't returned. This is the guild master of the Adventurers Guild in Verona, named Reknuas. Vale says the truth is, they ran into a minotaur on the 4th level, and it took Rudd's life before they could even react, and if only he had noticed it sooner, and he says that one more time, trying to sell it, and even Sasha begins fake crying. Reknuas though ain't buying it, says that he sees, and that he'll restrict access to that dungeon for the time being. The receptionist looks a little down, and then instantly surprised as the door is opened, and Rudd enters. Everybody starts whispering, saying that he actually lived. Vale, Sasha, and Rick realize this shit is bad, and even Reknuas is caught off guard. Vale runs over, saying thank goodness he's safe, but whispers into his ear that if he says a word of this, he's dead. Rick and Sasha as well walk over, saying that they really wanted to look for him, but the labyrinth was closed off. Rick starts squeezing his shoulder, trying to scare him, and Vale yells, saying that he's so glad he made it back alive, and they should just celebrate his return over dinner, as he puts his hand on his shoulder. Both him and Rick realize now that they can't move him at all anymore. Rudd says that these 3 assholes used him as bait. Everybody wonders if it's true, and Vale asks what he's talking about. Reknuas wants him to explain what he meant by that. Rudd says that Vale stripped the loot bag from him, and then he was attacked from behind. Rick then used a skill to draw the Minotaur's aggro to him, and Sasha cast haste on them, and they all ran away, leaving him for dead. Vale says that he lies, as they did no such thing. Reknuas says that they can settle this through the lids of truth, as a woman begins walking in the hallway, and she's kind of dressed up like a squid. We learn that she is a truth seeker, and Sasha's surprised, saying that they barely leave the capital. Reknuas says that he noticed that the mortality rate of the porters hired by his party was unusually high, so he personally reached out to an old friend, and brought the truth seeker in, and he wants her to tell them between Vale's group's claims and Rudd's, which one holds more truth. Her eyes begin to light up, and she says that the members of the Crimson Blade are lying. She holds her staff high into the air as it begins to glow, and she says Rudd's claim is the truth. Vale realizes that he's done for, and the other adventurers can't believe what the Crimson Blade were up to. Vale yells, asking her who she thinks she is fooling, and Reknuas says that surely he knows that her skill, the Eyes of Verity, cannot be acquired by normal means, and its effect is comparable to a unique skill. No lie can hold in the face of truth's eye. Whose words would you believe more? The word of someone who swore to dedicate their power to the kingdom, or his, someone who's constantly been killing people for his own gain? Vale looks worried, and Reknuas continues yelling, saying that abandoning one's comrades is a cardinal sin for an adventurer. Moreover, he deliberately attacked his party member, and used him as bait, so they will thoroughly investigate the rest of his crimes, and of course, he won't be able to avoid having his adventurer's license revoked, and being sold into slavery. Sasha screams no, and Rick drops to his knees, saying there's no way this is true. Vale shakes, asking if they're really trying to put him into slavery, and he looks at the truth seeker, saying that only that which hadn't showed up. He leaps at her with his sword, screaming to die. Rudd realizes what he must do, as he's getting closer to the truth seeker. Rudd dashes in, and blocks his attack for her. He says that him raising his blade against the truth seeker, and then hits him straight in the face before finishing his sentence, sending Vale flying all the way towards one of the walls, before the shockwave bursts all the way on the outside of it. We see the wall dented in, and Sasha and Rick have chills running down their spine, and Rudd says that's just a huge mistake to begin with. They then head to the parlor of the Adventurers Guild, and Reknuas apologizes for keeping Rudd here, saying that he must be exhausted. Rudd says it's fine, wondering what's going to happen to them. He says the three of them were taken by the guild's agents, and they will be put through a rigorous interrogation. He says if it's confirmed that they habitually use porters as bait, then other crimes will come to light. The Crimson Blade is going to lose all of their assets, and they're definitely going to be turned into slaves after having their adventurer qualifications revoked. However, since Vale attempted to harm a truth seeker, the chances are that he'll never be able to see him ever again. Rudd says this is good, and then Reknuas clears his throat, saying that the loot they got from the new labyrinth is now ownerless, so considering what Rudd's been through, it's only right he takes it, and there's roughly 200,000 rashins in there, telling him to accept it. Rudd does so, and outside we see him holding onto the bag. He says that he guesses he doesn't have to worry about living expenses for a while, and he can't imagine how long he'd have to work to get this sort of money by foraging herbs and weeds, and that adventurers really do make some bank. He then notices something different about how everybody's treating him, as nobody's wanting to pick on him anymore, but also, nobody's even friendly. He says sticking around any longer and someone might get suspicious about his sudden stat increase, and he has no choice but to scrape by the noxious labyrinth. He tells himself to stop having these shitty thoughts, as he's got money now, so he can finally buy some equipment, and eat all the food he wants, and he better drop by the weapons shop first before anything else. He then spots something nearby, and says to wait a minute, as he spots a magic bag worth exactly 200k rashins, and he tries to convince himself not to, since he can get all the dishes he wants, but we see the next day, he heads back into the noxious labyrinth, and he's easily killing the rats now, and he says he can't believe how easy it is. He had to fight tooth and nail against 5 of these before, but now it's effortless. He uses incite from that one monster, and he starts analyzing all of its stats. He can see that it's a level 9, and that its skill is called poison gas. He says it looks like he can use the skill he got from eating the monster and corpses as well, and he says come to think of it, he didn't think the plague rat was a level 9, but he also wonders how many levels he has gained. He took out these rats no problem, so he says probably at least 20, but when he opens his stats, he sees that he is now level 42, and his actual stat numbers are crazy. He starts freaking out, saying that he was level 7 right until yesterday. It's been some time since he last checked his skill list, so he opens it as well, and it's absolutely filled to the brim, and he says that there's so many of them, and he looks really excited. He says he went back to the place he fell down on his way out of the dungeon, but the collapsed wall was back to normal. The new labyrinth itself is going to be closed for a while, and he's planning on just doing a quick run through of the noxious labyrinth today, but he still wants to test it out, and to see how many floors he can descend with his current strength. Plus, he has this bag he bought yesterday, which was all the money he earned from the Crimson Blade. Also, he wants a proper monster to be his first subject. He heads down to the 6th floor, and it's still effortless, same as the 9th, and even the 13th, and he says that none of these are nearly enough, and he's got to go deeper to find a better monster for it. On the 24th floor, it's a swampy area, and we see a lizard man wearing some armor lurking around. Rudd spots it while hiding behind a tree, and activates his insight. He sees it's level 25, and he looks at its stats and skills, and thinks about it, saying that soldier lizards usually fight in packs, but this one's by itself, and that a lizard is definitely good enough to test it out. He jumps at it from behind, and swings, only barely cutting its arm, and he says it's not bad, but it won't be able to dodge the next one. But it begins running away, and he wonders what the hell is going on. He tells it to stop, before he realizes where it's running, as it's a dead end. He tells it that there's no more places to run, and it begins smirking. Rudd can tell what those eyes mean, and he realizes he messed up, as he's now surrounded by lizard men, and he says that it was a trap to begin with. Rudd says even with the level difference, this is pretty bad. One of them swings straight down at him, and he dodges. He says that their chips were already on the table, so he decides to deal with them one by one. He dashes toward the first one, clashing swords with it. He knocks it over with sheer strength, and it begins to hit its head on the back of the wall. When it opens its eyes once more, Rudd's already closed the gap with his sword held high. He swings down to finish it, but one of its friends dashes in, saving it. Rudd is surprised that it actually stepped in. Then here's the other one coming up from behind, and he narrowly dodges the attack. It genuinely thought that it had the upper hand, but Rudd says that was actually way too close for comfort. He wonders how many of them there are, because they just keep growing by the second. He says this is weird. These monsters are known to fight in packs for sure, but the way they use traps, and ambushes, and coordinate their attacks is way too smooth. He says that he can hear a faint high-pitched sound right before they begin to attack together, and he can only assume that's what he needs to take care of. He glances over to his side, spotting a red lizard man off in the distance. He uses his insight, and focuses solely on it. As it gets closer, we see that it is called a general lizard. It is level 32, and one of its skills is called command and control. Rudd says this makes a lot more sense, and that he's the boss of this pack. It begins screaming, hyping the other ones up, and 3 of them leap at him in unison. Rudd uses the Minotaur's enhanced strength, and starts to scream before charging through with pure brute force through all of the lizards. One of them steps up to block the general's path, but Rudd jumps over it, stomping on its head, aiming straight towards the leader. He says now is his only chance. He grits his teeth, and swings down with his full force, slicing it across the chest, but he wonders what the hell is going on, because his attack did 0 damage to it. The general begins grinning, and starts to come in with his own attack straight towards Rudd's chest, and he realizes he can't dodge this in time. He activates the spider skill to harden, and he says that it's not the only one with tricks up its sleeve. The general then distances itself, and Rudd says he just doesn't get it. He definitely felt it connect, but there's hardly a scratch on the bastard. He doesn't have anything to boost its defense, and something else is at work here, as he starts analyzing every other skill around him. He says that nothing special stands out from the minions, but one of them catches his eye, as he sees it cut across the chest, and it has a skill called sacrifice. He says this must be it, and that lizard took the damage for its leader. He charges forward to it, before piercing it through its chest, killing it. He says that he knows the job of a meat shield more than anyone else, and that he's really sorry about this, but it must be done. The general, realizing that its trick has been seen through, starts screaming, and it and the rest leap at Rudd. Rudd then uses Silkweave, another one of the spider's abilities, and flies upwards towards the top of the dungeon, and the general can't believe what it is witnessing. Rudd thanks him for rushing at him all at once, and he puts all the webs together, and he starts to spew out his webs like he's Spider-Man, and throws out an electric net towards all of them. The general screams before they're all wrapped up on the floor. The general, realizing he can't do anything, Rudd tells him to raise his head, as it looks like it's over, and he cuts it clean off, sending it flying through the air. Some time later, we see its head bleeding out on the floor, as Rudd finishes cleaning up the group that was left. He says it's time for a meal, and also a good opportunity to put that magic bag he bought to use. A magic bag is exactly what it sounds like. It's magically enchanted to have more space than it looks, and it's extremely lightweight when locked. He brought out some cooking tools, seasoning, and sauces. He says he was too busy trying to save his ass when he fell through the hidden door, but there's something that he's always wanted to try. As he starts cooking up some of the lizard tails, he wonders what it would be if he were to properly prepare and eat monster meat. He begins drooling, and takes his very first bite, and he says that this shit is actually straight gas. Then he can't believe monster meat is this good, and it makes him want to take bite after bite. He also gains each individual skill that Lizard Man had, and this will continue for everyone. He says that it's just so weird, asking how he's gaining their skills. He wonders if it has something to do with their corrupted magical energy. He's already using the skills of the Minotaur, and Spider, and even the Evil Eye as well. The only ones he hasn't tested out yet are the Thunder Wolf, and Black Snakes. He gets excited after finishing his meal, saying that he wants to try eating even more monsters on his way back, but he almost forgot. He should probably take a bite out of the lizard who had the skill sacrifice, just in case. He heads back up to the 21st floor, as we see some moths as well as some frogs. He then starts to activate the Thunder Wolf's ability called Chain Lightning, as he shoots it out, zapping the frogs, killing them instantly, as well as the moths, cooking them up. He says that it's a pretty nifty skill. It looks like these monsters relied on a combo of status effect skills to disable their foes, but it's just their luck to run into him, and it's time for him to get started. For a dish with frog meat and insects, there's only one thing you can think of, and it has to be fried. He says that venom toad meat is so damn tender, and moth meat with the seasoning he has on it is just really good, and he just wishes he had some beer with him. He of course gains all of the skills of both of them. He hears a loud sound, which catches him off guard a little bit. He wonders what that is, and he hears a thud, and human voices. He wonders if there are adventurers who have reached this floor, and he says that he's a happy camper, and that he doesn't get the chance to observe other parties fighting often, and that maybe he'll get the chance to learn their trade secrets. We see blood dripping off of a sword, as there is a woman on the ground bleeding, with a group of men standing over her. She holds onto her shoulder, and one of the dudes says hurt, and he never thought that she would have had that much mana left. The guy says that her effort won't go to waste, and he reaches towards her head before pulling off her hood. We see that she is an elf, and he says that an elf maiden sure is a rare piece, and they wonder how much they can get for this pretty thing. Rudd says in here he thought he finally ran into some respectable people who he could party with. They are all surprised to hear him, as they didn't sense him, and Rudd says that he doesn't know the backstory here, but he can't just ignore a lady being attacked. One of them asks who he's meant to be, and Rudd says an adventurer of course. He does not want to mention his rank. The elf tells him to run for it, as these men are adventurer hunters. Rudd says he was told they are on par with high-rank adventurers, and starts to use incite on them. One of them is level 65, and he can't see his stats or his skills, as they are blanked off. The same for every one of these other men, who are all in their 50s, and he says that these assholes are using conceal skills, or something that blocks detection. And the leader, Fulias, tells his men to get rid of them. The first guy to leap up sticks his tongue out like a freak, and Rudd says he's quick. He blocks his attack, and the guy says that he guesses he's not a weakling. Rudd asks if he's talking to himself, and the dude says that it seems like he's got some jokes. Rudd begins fighting back, and the dude says that nobody else is laughing, and it seems like it's a tough crowd today. Rudd begins to take in a deep breath, and activates venom spray, spitting it out straight onto the dude's face. It begins burning as he drops his sword, and he begins screaming while rolling on the floor. Turns out this dude's name is Jairus, but let's do him the disrespect, I'm not even calling him by his name. His teammates wonder if he really just spit out venom, saying that that is something a monster would do. Rudd says that he's sorry for fighting dirty, and it's not so very adventurer-like of him, but this is the only way a weakling like himself can survive. Bro should really put his tongue up. Fulias wonders if that was his unique skill, saying they shouldn't let their guard down, and this time they can jump him all at once. The first two lead the charge, one swings, and Rudd narrowly dodges underneath, and then has no chance to counterattack, because the guy's teammate is right there with him. Rudd distances himself, before he sees a boot right in his face, as Fulias has already closed the gap. Rudd activates Harden, and takes the blow straight to the face, but it still has so much power, sending him flying backwards into a puddle. Fulias says that he's tough as nails, he had planned to snap his neck, but that sure is impressive. One of them begins to approach him, saying that he's gonna end this now, and as soon as he steps in the water, Rudd starts making a run for it. The dude asks where he thinks he's going, and Fulias tells him to stop, as they're in the tainted bog. The deeper he goes, the harder it'll be to get back, and that he won't be able to withstand the bog's poison for long either, and he'll come crawling out soon enough. They watch Rudd from a distance, asking how long he plans to marinate in that nasty-ass water, saying that they should settle this like adventurers. Rudd says that falling into this was luck in disguise. The fumes around the bog quickly drain an adventurer's health, and they start to wonder just how long he's gonna stand out in the middle of the swamp, since it's already been 10 minutes, and their heads are pounding. They also feel sick to their stomachs. Rudd says that it's about time to begin. He would have preferred to wait until they got weaker, but if he drags it out anymore, it's just gonna make things worse for the injured elf, since he's trying to bag her. He asks them how it feels being poisoned, and affected with status ailments, saying surely it's excruciating. He starts walking back, and they ask if he's finally given up, saying he could have saved them the trouble of waiting. Rudd says too bad for them, he's immune to status ailments, so he can't exactly empathize. Fulias realizes the entire thing was a setup, and yells, telling his men they can't wait anymore, and they have to kill him now. They begin running into the bog to deal with Rudd, and this time he easily matches the first guy's blade, so much so that he starts to overwhelm him. Rudd says the bog steals their health with every passing second, and when the poison builds up in their body, their stats begin to drop. The second guy comes in for an attack, which he notices since he's screaming at him. Rudd hardens to block, tanking the attack with his back. The dude can't believe this, and Rudd says it's his turn, as he starts to have a little electric charge around him. He activates chain lightning, stabbing his sword into the bog, zapping both these dudes until they are crisp. One of them is still standing though, while smoking, and he charges at Rudd, calling him a bastard. Rudd then activates air slash, which is one of the moth's abilities, and it flies through, actually butchering the hell out of this dude. That is brutal. Filias says from venom spray, to harden, to even chain lightning, as well as air slash, how the hell is he using monster skills? Rudd runs at him, saying that he has no reason to explain anything to him. Rudd begins slowly overwhelming him, and Filias says that while he should have the advantage in melee combat, since he's obviously way higher leveled, but because of that damn poison he's losing, as his blood gets sent flying out everywhere. He then uses one of his abilities called enhanced dexterity, and he says that he refuses to lose like this to a filthy weakling. He begins to imbue his blade with an aura, and charges forward. Rudd though doesn't try to run away, and instead meets it using the Minotaur's strength, and shatters Filias's blade, but also cleaves him clean in two. As he falls onto the ground, Rudd says that he definitely would have beaten him if not for the poison. Rudd and the elf start walking, and she thanks him for saving her. She says she doesn't know what she would have done if he didn't show up. He says he couldn't just stand by and watch. He says she's trying to act tough, but the poison must have done considerable damage over time. He tells her he managed some first aid for the time being, but that's not enough. It's quite unusual to see an elf in a place like this, plus she was being chased by adventurer hunters, and he wonders what her story is. They then hear the sound of a moth buzzing, and they see it directly ahead of them, and this time it's a giant one. Rudd says that looks like what could be the moth's boss, so he inspects it, and he sees that it's a level 37 greater moth pose. Its stats are pretty juiced, and it has an ability called moth vision, and paralysis dust, and poison dust. Rudd says it looks like it's nothing but a big bug, and he's got this in the bag. It then uses air slash towards him. I don't know why he's caught off guard, because he literally just read it, but it flies straight past him, shattering the ground, and even barely scraping by the elf. Rudd asks if she's okay, and she says that she thinks so. Rudd says that it's starting off with scare tactics, and he'll show it what real intimidation is, saying that surely it doesn't think it's untouchable just because it's in the air. He then starts to activate air slash himself, shooting it out as it flies straight up, hitting the greater moth, cutting its wings. Blood begins flying out, but it doesn't fall down yet. Realizing it's in a bad situation, it starts to spread out its paralysis dust, and Rudd says that won't work on him. He then realizes that it'll work on the elf though, but we see her casting a spell as it shoots out a giant green beam, blowing off 2 sets of its wings, causing it to fly down. Rudd says that wind magic makes sense, as she's an elf after all. He then walks over, stabbing it in the head, and she says that both poison and paralysis affect him nothing, and that the skills he uses are just like the monsters. He wonders how to talk his way out of this, and we see her starting to flinch up in pain as she falls to the floor. Rudd asks if it's because of the paralysis powder. She says that isn't it. Once they get out of here, she'll tell him everything. They start making their way back up, and finally they get outside of the dungeon, and they both prop up against a tree. She says it feels so much better now that they're out of the labyrinth. Before she tells him her tale, she wants to introduce herself. She says that her name is Alicia, and she is a former adventurer. He asks if she means like Alicia of the Misty Green. She laughs, saying that she didn't think she'd be recognized. He says that of course he would recognize her. She's from the elite S-rank party of the Kingdom of Rudeos, the Ether Path, saying that everybody's heard of its members, and from what he's heard, the Ether Path was defeated. She says that's correct. They were all defeated by a monster 5 years ago. That day they challenged the monster lurking on the lowest floor of the S-rank dungeon, the Abyssal Labyrinth. Her party leader was slain in an instant. Another member was gravely injured, and forced to retire. A third member was trapped within the labyrinth itself. She also did not walk out unscathed. She shows that she has a mark on her chest. He starts to freak out, asking what she's doing, but then realizes it, and she says that this curse is something she was inflicted with back then. It's the mark of a level down curse. He says he's never heard of such a thing, and she says neither had she, but all she managed to do was slow it down. The adventurer hunters they ran into earlier knew of her curse, and they must have thought they could use it, or use her in her current state for profit. If her level reaches 0 like this, she'll die anyways, but even so, she didn't want to become their plaything. That's one thing she couldn't live for. Rudd then realizes something, saying that he thinks he might be able to help her. He pulls out his stat card, and looks at his skill sacrifice. It asks him to choose a target, and take any attacks or status ailments they receive, and he tells her there's something he wants to try, asking if he could test it out on her. She says sure, and he puts his hands on her shoulders. Before he activates sacrifice, the curse begins to travel up his arm, and she can tell that her curse is being transferred. She says that's enough, at this rate he'll be cursed instead. He smiles, telling her it's alright, and to trust him. As the level down curse is now being afflicted to Rudd instead, she can't help but watch as the demon begins to stretch its hand directly towards Rudd, but a bright light intervenes, as of course he has status immunity. The curse begins to get eaten up by the immunity, and Rudd says this did it, and it seems like nothing went wrong either. She asks what that was just now, but he tells her to check her card first. We see that she is only level 43 due to the curse, and her status is now normal. She says she can't believe it, and that the curse is gone. He tells her that his unique skill is status immunity, and he thought that he could nullify the curse by taking it, and he's sure glad it worked out. She asks what the hell is wrong with him, and why he would do something so recklessly for someone he just met. She begins crying, but saying still, she's so grateful that he did. He looks at her smile, and says that's good enough for him, and he starts comforting her, telling her not to mention it. Our boy is a Chad. They head back to an inn, and we see Alicia slam her mug onto a table, and she says that sure does hit the spot. She says the food's cheap, and the drinks are good, and that Rudd sure does have good taste in taverns. He gives her the thumbs up, but says that they used to kick him out when he came by himself. He asks if it's okay for her to drink so much, as she was in pretty bad shape earlier. She says that she got healed as soon as she got back, and more importantly a momentous occasion like this requires a drink or two, and they cheers. Rudd asks what her plan is now. She says that before she answers, she wants to know more about him, asking how he became an adventurer in the first place. He explains how a long time ago, his home village was attacked by monsters, and because of them he lost his family and friends, but then an S-rank adventurer appeared out of nowhere, and dealt with the Hydra-like monster, protecting Rudd, and he did it with complete ease. He saved his life, and the image of that adventurer was burned into his mind, and he was the one who told him those words that he recalled before, and Rudd decided that someday he'd also become an S-rank adventurer. Well, at least that was his goal. She says that's a pretty noble pursuit. He asks if she's really not gonna laugh at him, and she says that she used to dream of becoming one too, and then she planned to become even stronger than she was before the curse. Her party member is still trapped in the deepest recesses of the abyssal labyrinth, and come what may, she intends to delve in, and challenge that monster again. Which got her wondering, until they both gain their strength to achieve their goals, how about they form a party? He says that he doesn't know, and before he can answer, a man grabs on her wrist, asking a few questions, saying that he's drinking with such a fine lady. These are the dudes from earlier on when they kicked him out. He recognizes them as well, and they start trying to hit on her, saying that she should forget this loser, and go sit down with them. Rudd grabs the dude by his shoulder, saying to leave her alone. He grabs Rudd by his shirt, asking if he really wants to scrap. He starts glaring at them, and they glare back, and Alicia tells them all to stop it, saying that they're at a tavern, and if they're gonna fight here, there's a simpler way to deal with this. As we see them all taking a seat, she says that they should be fighting with their tankards instead. I'm actually so glad this didn't turn into a stereotypical bar fight. She starts chugging it, and people cheer her on. They start matching her drink for drink, and Baldy's even double fisting it. After a while, Rudd watches with a smile on his face, and the crowd is super lively. Baldy's incapacitated, and so is the other dude, but Alicia is still okay, and she is deemed the winner. She gives Rudd a little victory pose, and he's glad that she won, but it was also just really fun. He says that she's something else, and she even had quite a bit to drink before the showdown. She laughs, saying that he saved her life, and there's no way she'd let her savior get humiliated in front of her, and also she's only a little bit tipsy, as she falls over onto his chest. He tells her to be careful, but says that he guesses it can't be helped. He activates sacrifice, and she instantly feels better. He says that he transferred her drunkenness to him, since he can't physically get drunk. She gets excited, saying first the curse, and now this, his unique skill is so good, and they absolutely need to party up, but first she needs to go drink some more. He says that she's an alcoholic. She says it's a shame that she won't get to try the local delicacy today, and the chef says that the thing is, monsters have made a nest at the trout fishery, and they ask the guild for help, but they said all the high-ranking adventurers are away, and if the two of them are up for it, they might be able to take on the job. They head to the trout farm of Verona, and we see them on a boat. She says that she never knew the trout for the city were farmed in this area, and that they should get this job over with, and have some of that famous dish. He says that sounds like a plan, but then notices something as it shoots out of the water, passing right by them. He says there it is, that's the monster that the tavern master was talking about. Alicia tells him to look, as they're absolutely surrounded by a whole army of them. He says that this has to be some kind of joke. They start to approach the boat. Rudd uses his inspection to look at their stats. They are called Gelnefs, and their skills are rapid swim, water bomb and snipe. One of them comes up and shoots water at him, but he blocks it with his sword. More of them now begin to tag in, and he says it's crazy no matter how much he blocks there are more and more. His footing is also shaky so it's hard to keep dodging. He says he's sick of this shit, and leaps into the water. Alicia is surprised, as they begin to swarm him. He smiles waiting for them to start attacking him. They go into attack, but we see lightning beginning to surge at his fingertips. As he has casted chain lightning. All Alicia sees is a bright light, and toasted fish floating to the surface. Rudd resurfaces as well to breathe. She asks if he's okay, he says he is. But there's still a few left down there. The ones deeper down were holding off out of caution. And he wonders if they are protecting something. He tells her he's gonna scout the bottom for a bit. Also there's something he needs her help with. She wonders what it is, as we see a rope tied around him. He begins to dive deeper into the lake. He says they are ignoring him just as he thought, but they aren't fleeing either. He then spots it at the bottom, as there is a monster deep on the lake floor. He inspects it, and we learn its name as the tentacles. He says it's either more like a giant sea anomian or maybe a hermit crab. From its tentacles it breaks one off, as it turns into a Gelnef. He says that thing just spawned it in. He realizes that if he doesn't get rid of the tentacles, it'll be pointless no matter how many Gelnefs he takes down. And it doesn't seem like it's going to attack, so he needs to head back up and prepare. But as he does, he feels his leg getting tugged by one of the tentacles' tentacles. He realizes now that they weren't attacking, so he would let his guard down, and that's exactly what happened. He starts to grab onto its tentacle and activates his chain lightning, but it mostly just takes out the Gelnefs. He says if he does it enough, even though its size is so big, it should be okay. But that's when he feels that the tentacles have already been separated due to its skill. He says that he forgot about its sever appendage, and as soon as it felt the shock travel up its tentacles, it got rid of them to get rid of the potentially fatal damage. The tentacles itself then leaps at him, and he realizes that this is bad since he can't hold his breath any longer. He tugs on the rope, saying that he's counting on Alicia as she notices it. She realizes that's the signal, and starts to use her magic to propel the sail forward, and it pulls the rope with it. As he starts to fly away from the monster, it can't do anything but watch as he's moving too fast for it to catch up. Back on the shore, he's coughing, and she asks if he's okay. He says that he thinks so, and he wouldn't have made it out without her. He tells her about the monster at the bottom of the lake that's spawning the Gelnefs, and says that it is quick and healing, so he needs to go down immediately. She says that the water is more favorable to the monsters, and her magic can't reach down there, asking if there's anything they can do about that. He says there is something, but he doesn't know if he should be honest with her. She told him pretty much everything about her curse while holding back, and even joined his party, so it's only right that he should share it as well. He decides to show it to her first, telling her not to tell anybody about this, as he leans down near one of the Gelnefs. He says that what she's about to see should be kept secret. But it jumps back to the tentacles at the bottom of the lake, and it notices something as Rudd swimming straight down at it, using the Gelnefs' ability rapid swim. A light blue aura coats his body, allowing him to move faster through the water. The Gelnefs go to attack him, but due to this coating, he has full control over his sword as well, so he easily fends them off. The tentacles realizes it's its chance to attack, and shoots its tentacles towards him, but he easily evades them using his rapid swim, and gets way closer to the actual monster now. He then stabs straight into its shell, causing it to bleed everywhere. He says that he won't be able to sever this, and starts to use his chain lightning, pouring everything he's got into the tentacles. Now that the tentacles and the Gelnefs are dead, he says that the fishery should be at peace again, and Alicia is the problem now. He wonders what she was thinking, watching him eat the flesh of a monster. He doesn't know how she'll react or what she's going to say to him back at the surface. But he decides that he can't run away from it forever, so he heads up to the surface. But when he does, he looks forward, seeing that she's nowhere in sight. He smiles a little bit, saying that he didn't know why he would assume that she would wait for him. He got his hopes up again like a dummy. But she asks him what took him so long, saying that it looks like he's not hurt, asking if he dealt with the boss. He says that he did. She tells him that's a relief, as she was getting a bit twitchy just waiting. So she gathers him kindling for a fire, hoping to distract herself, saying that he needs to dry his clothes. He asks if it doesn't bother her at all, as she saw what he did. She says that she'd be lying if she said it didn't shock her. It meant that he trusts her enough to share his secrets without holding back, and that means way more to her than what he actually did. He says he sees and thanks her, and then says that he hopes she doesn't mind this, as he wanted to gain the boss's skill too, so he brought back a few of its chunks. He says that he also got a fish, saying that it's a Varona trout, and he caught it on the way up. It might be a bit jarring to see someone eating a monster right next to her, but before he can even ask her if she wants it, she starts drooling, saying that she does. He laughs, saying that they should eat first, and he'll tell her about how he came to eat the monsters. He sets up the campfire, starts cooking up the meat, and she says that this shit's gas. She says that she's glad that he told her the story of how he became a monster eater. He says truthfully he's glad for it, because he's now one step closer to what he dreamed, and even though he was an E-rank adventurer for as long as he can remember, he can finally start moving up. She says that he's right, and it was through that power he saved her from the hunters, and the curse. She then says that now that it's all cooked like this, the monster shit does look pretty. He says that it's actually really good, and he didn't need to eat the gelnefs again, but he wanted to cook one properly to see how it would be, asking if she wants to try some. He says just because he's unaffected doesn't mean that she would be as well, and she refuses, but she wants to ask him one more time if he would like to form a proper party with her. He hesitates for a moment, saying that she must know people far stronger than him. She says that it's been 5 years since she was cursed, even if they survived the labyrinth. Considering the human lifespan, many of them are probably retired. Besides, most adventurers who fight on the front lines are not in their right minds, and she can't just rely on their strength alone. She'd rather have a companion she can rely on, and that she can trust herself to. And if that someone could be him, then she thinks that she can feel at ease no matter what may come their way. He smiles, saying that he'll accept her invite then. They head to the Adventurers Guild, and we hear Alicia yelling, saying that they should go embark on their first job now as a party. He says with him still being an E rank, they're not likely to get any impressive jobs. She says probably, which is why to start off, they'll find something simple. They go to the receptionist, saying that she'll be creating a party with him, asking if she could register the two of them. She says sure, and after she hands her her adventurer plate, she starts freaking out, saying that she is the S-rank adventurer, Alicia of the Misty Green. Even though her level is lower now, her stats are still pretty goated, and she still has her unique skill, and all of the other skills she's accrued along the way. She asks why she would party with somebody like the Forager, but stops herself. Alicia asks what she was trying to say, and she says nothing, and she'll register her immediately. Alicia also says that she was hoping to raise Rudd's rank while they're at it, asking what requirements he hasn't fulfilled yet. She says as for him, he's met the quota for gathering and such, he just needs to top out his numbers of slain monsters. Alicia then asks for the most difficult slaying job for a party of 2. She says she's got it, and they head to the outskirts of Verona. The receptionist told them that there was a job to eradicate some grey wolves right now. Their stats are straight shit, and so is their level. They have a heightened smell as well, but to Rudd it doesn't matter. As he activates Vanish from the spider directly behind them, before they can even realize what's happened, he instantly cuts all 3 of their throats, killing them. Some more from the side see this and start howling to alert the rest, and he tells Alicia it's her turn. She says okay, and starts to summon her spirit magic, and we see one of her spirits named Sylphiad. She asks Sylphiad to borrow her power. Rudd says that it sure is cool to actually see a summon in person. The wolves leap at her and she starts chanting for her magic, before turning the 2 of them into an actual mist. Some serious overkill for a couple of dogs. The entire ground begins shaking, and even Rudd says that is some serious power, asking how you're even meant to dodge something like that. She says that she can't do it like the way she used to before the curse, but it's still pretty good. He just wonders how strong her prime was. Then he hears something behind him. There's a whole pack leaping directly at him. He says that he can't believe there were this many hiding still, and that he won't be able to dodge this as it comes in close. But Alicia yells out for Sylphiad, and in an instant Rudd is taken away. The wolves are just left there confused, looking around, wondering where he went. They then hear him yelling and look up, to see him hovering in the air, asking if there's anything she can't do. He thanks her and she says that he can thank Sylphiad for this, but it's too early to let their guards down. And besides this pack, there are 10 more wolves lurking in the bushes. There's probably even more out there. He says that he guesses it's his turn now, and she wonders what he's going to do all the way up here. He starts to use echolocation that he got from the bats, and he's able to sense every single wolf in the area around them. He says that there's around 30 from what he can find, including the ones they took out earlier. They should hit the monthly quota in a single go. He tells Alicia to attack the areas as he points them out. The wolves look up only to see a bright green light, and some of them try running while the rest just sit there and eat the attack, getting turned into a red mist. As she continues attacking wherever he points out, constantly killing the wolves, he says that the accuracy of echolocation drops off significantly unless he is in a confined space. And even with her powerful magic, she won't be able to nail each spot with pinpoint accuracy. However, if she can surround them from the edges and drive them inward, they can hurdle all of the wolves into a single place. After a bit she's a little tired, saying that it's time to tag out, as the wolves are exactly where he wants them. She says the rest is in his hands. He starts to approach them from behind and releases a paralysis cloud, causing all of the wolves to fall onto the floor, unable to control their bodies. And he takes them out one by one. They eventually gather all the bodies, and the total comes out to around 52. She says she can't believe they encountered this many wolves in one day. He says that just means the monster population has increased that much. He then asks what that spirit magic she used earlier was. She says simply put, it's borrowing the magic power of Sylphia that already exists in nature. Although you can't really see them normally, spirits exist everywhere. To borrow their power, you have to offer a portion of your own mana, but for their relatively small initial cost you gain access to some pretty powerful magic. Above all, it's always immensely helpful, just like what he saw before. He says that the magic that allowed them to levitate is something he's never heard of before. Sylphia starts grabbing onto his hair, pulling it, and he tells her to cut it out because the shit hurts. Alicia then tells him that Sylphia enjoys mischief now and then, and the bigger the reaction is the happier she gets. But since it's getting night time, as much as she'd like to go back to town, they can't exactly do that. He begins hovering once more and she says they'll just fly about halfway for now. He says that he's all for this and he's always dreamed about this since he was a kid. Then asks her what other types of spirit magic she can use. She says that she's good with water, ice, light, and earth. But darkness and fire don't suit her. Spirits with conflicting affinities to the caster require a huge amount of mana to work with, where they might not lend you their power at all. But in his case he's already earned Sylphia's approval. He asks if she's certain if Sylphia likes him because she just keeps bullying him. He then notices something, as there's smoke off in the distance. When they get closer, they realize that's the direction of the village. And they see some kind of demon walking through the fire. In the village, people are screaming, and the demon we saw earlier is approaching two people. They start freaking out, saying that there's only meant to be wolves in this area, so why the hell is there a Baphomet here? It raises its hand, creating a magic circle above it. The adventurer realizes this is bad, as something starts to exit the portal. We see it's actually some kind of lance, and it shoots straight towards the adventurers, leaving a fiery trail behind it. But as it gets close, a water spell flies in, protecting them. They look over, wondering who it was, only for it to be Rudd, who used water bomb. We see a spirit with him as well. Baphomet begins growling. Alicia asks the two of them if they're okay. They say yes, and she tells them they'll handle the monster, but they need to tell them what happened here. Rudd starts running straight in and uses his incite. We see it's only level 27, and its stats aren't actually that crazy. It's got some cool skills though, called Wisdom of Cinders, and Wisdom of Earth. He says that its level is lower than a general lizard's, but its stats are definitely higher, which means that it's a different class of monster altogether. Another magic circle forms, and it instantly turns into 3 more. He says that the 2 skills it is grant wisdom of a specific element. As they're shooting out the attack, Rudd says that he can't really fight it with magic, because his fire magic is far too weak to use in combat, but if he can eat this guy, he might be able to use magic in fights from here on out. He swings down, and the Baphomet blocks it with its arm. This surprises him, that it only had to use its arm. He wonders if it's ineffective, this skill Steel Claws, but says that if it's a strength contest, he's all for it. The magic circles appear once more and start to shoot out their attacks. He starts to evade them, but we still see a giant explosion from where he was standing. Alicia looks over worried, but Rudd comes out of the fire. She asks if he's okay, and he says that he is. It kept 2 flame lances in reserve just to use them solely for defense. Now this one is a pretty intelligent beast. She says that the creature is definitely observing their moves, and that she'll take this moment to get him caught up. She asked the people earlier to evacuate the villagers, but not everyone has been able to leave yet, so they need to avoid causing collateral damage while the evacuation continues, meaning they can't use a devastating spell to defeat it. He knows that's already the case, and she used her mana to fly and transport them here, so she's gotta be running low, which means he needs to come up with something to defeat it. She says that she'll support him with the magic she has left, and that he should trust her as she has his back. He says that he'll put his faith in her all the way then, and begins charging straight in at the Baphomet. It raises its hands once more, sending out fire lances, and Rudd says that he needs to focus on what is ahead of him. As he's running forward, straight into the fire lances, Alicia casts 2 water bolts to meet them, extinguishing the fire lances, letting him have a clear attack path. He says that for her to cancel out its magic, she has to be using a counter-element with equal force. The Baphomet starts to get pissed, and this time instead of fire lances from the magic circle, we see rocks beginning to form. It points both of its hands towards Rudd, and she tells him that this is his chance. As she starts to use wind to lift her own rocks, hitting each and every one of the ones it created, and Rudd says that this time she created rocks of the exact same size to cancel them out. It's a method that conserves mana and minimizes the damage to the surroundings, and her mana control is out of this world. That's the might of a former S rank. He leaps up into the air and uses his enhanced strength skill, swinging down and cutting the Baphomet's fingers off. It starts to scream in pain and comes in straight towards him with an attack, but some kind of fire attack goes straight into its mouth, causing it to explode from the inside. We see it was none other than Alicia who cast it, and she asks how its own magic tasted as it starts to char to a crisp. All the villagers hear Baphomet screaming and just wonder if it's over. One of them even says that the explosion as well as the screech, there's only one thing they can think of, and they must have defeated it. Baldy says that if he hadn't been injured one of them could have gone to help. Alicia then appears in front of them and they're surprised to see her. She thanks them for evacuating the villagers, and he's just glad that she made it safely. She says that they also dealt with the Baphomet, however though they managed to defeat it right now, there's a chance it'll recover and come back to finish the job, so they're going to chase after it now. She says that she has a favor to ask. The adventurers who were fighting it beforehand say that she can just ask, they'll do anything. Then they hear her stomach growling, and she admits that she just wants some spare food. We see off in a forest some ways away from the village. Rudd is preparing his campfire to cook Baphomet. Alicia says that she's here and he welcomes her back, asking how the villagers were. She says it seems like they all evacuated in time and it's thanks to the adventurers they saved. She told them they were going to go after Baphomet, so no one will suspect a thing even if the body is not there. He apologizes for making her do this and thanks her, then says it looks like it's about time to eat. As we see he's made some Baphomet stew. He starts adding some spices and seasoning, takes a bite, and says that it has a pretty gamey guilt flavor, but it's good enough to make up for it. He of course gets his skills as well. She asks if it's really that good, saying that the sight of someone eating a humanoid monster is a little off-putting. He says she's not exactly wrong, and it's scary how he's gradually getting used to it. There's then some rustling from the bushes which startles her, and we see 3 fat little pigs called the stun pigs. Their stats are pretty bad, but they have a skill named Charge. Rudd says that it sure feels like they're running into more monsters than they ought to, but he'll make the most out of this encounter and finally be able to use some magic in a fight. He stretches out his hand and even the pigs start cringing at him. He wonders what's going on, and one of the pigs uses Charge, going straight in at him. Bro's still trying to figure out why his magic doesn't work as the pig destroys their campfire, sending his Baphomet stew all across the ground. Alicia says that she thought he could use magic now, and she doesn't have much mana left so she won't be able to contribute much to this fight. He says that really pisses him off, and she asks what he's talking about. He says that he spent so much time draining the blood and skimming the foam, and he was going to savor the dish as much as he could. Now he's going to make them pay for this, and he's going to eat every single last one of them. She tells him to calm down, saying that the skill they use, Charge, increases their running power so the impact upon collision is immense, and just to be safe they need to fight at a distance where they can't use it. Simply put, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to run away for a bit. They do so until later that night one of the little piglets is sniffing around. While they have their scent, they can't find them because they're up in a tree. She says that they need to figure out why his magic didn't activate. He says that this is the first time he hasn't been able to use a skill he acquired from eating. She tells him to use incite on the skill itself. He says that's a great idea, and when he does it says that anyone who possesses this skill instinctively understands how to use the magic. He says that it reads like he's just supposed to know how to do it. The fact that he still can't means that his head might be too thick to understand magic. He was able to use fire magic to begin with regardless of how weak it was, and she can't wrap her head around this. Then she realizes it, perhaps in order to cast magic that monsters use, he needs to manipulate the essence of corruption itself. He says that could be it. Instead of using mana, it would just be corruption. She tells him that she's not familiar with how the essence works, but if he gained a monster's power fully, then it's worth a shot. He says that he'll try his best and starts to close his eyes, focusing and recalling the feeling he had when consuming the first monster he ate. He says that corruption spread through his body and he felt more alive than ever. If he could draw it out from deep within his body, that might be his key. His heart starts racing and there's a purple light emanating off of him. It looks like it worked, and when he slowly opens his eyes there are 3 magic circles in front of him. He says that he actually did it. All it took was sensing the flow of corruption and controlling it as if it were an extension of himself. The little pigs see the attack coming in, but it's too late to dodge, so them little oinkers get cooked. He starts cooking up the little pigs, and he's even humming a little tune. He apologizes for making her wait again, and she says that it couldn't be helped. Since he uses the essence of corruption when using magic, and judging by how he didn't seem to run out of it during the fight, it's safe to say he can cast skills consecutively. He says that this is true. The moment he felt the essence flowing through his body, he immediately understood how to use those skills, and if he can tap into it instead of mana, maybe he can strengthen his body or weapons with it just like mana. Among adventurers, there are quite a few who hone their mana control skills to use them in combat. You can enhance your physical abilities by coating yourself with mana, or should you coat your weapon with it, your attack power increases. It even allows one to send arcs of slashes afar. She says she sees, and since he couldn't learn such skills until now, it must be because he has a very low mana pool. He says that sounds about right. But now he has much more essence than mana, and above all, it seems like eating monsters replenishes his essence reserves. He eats the pigs, gaining the skill charge, and she says this means he can absorb the essence and store it in his body. And that's all well and good, but why did it have to be pork cutlets, as this shit just looks too good? He asks if she wants to take a bite, and of course she's hesitant because of all the taboo behind it. As she goes to do it, there's a giant explosion, and they wonder what that was. They turn, and there's a giant pig staring at them, and he says it's about time for the boss to show up. It uses charge straight in towards her, and it's too fast for her to react. He realizes that it used charge, so he grabs onto her and manages to get out of the attack path. She says she owes him one, and it definitely felt like it was pretty far away, but it moved right in front of her in an instant, asking how that could be, and why is there a monster like that roaming around here since they aren't even in a labyrinth. Rudd though is pissed, saying not this shit again, as it totally ruined his dish, and he worked so hard to make it. Alicia says that seems like a good thing, because the pig's being roasted. He says that it has fire resistance, and it's not bothered at all by the flames. It is called a King Stun Pig, it's level 38, and its stats are pretty decent. Rudd says the stats are cool, but its only skills are charge and fire resistance. So he starts to use the wisdom of the earth, and creates a giant fist out of the dirt, sending it straight towards the pig. The boss of course charges all the way through it, and Rudd realizes he can't dodge, so he uses his hardened ability and tanks the attack. It sends him flying backwards into a tree, and Alicia asks if he's okay, but realizes she doesn't have the time to be distracted, as it's charging straight into her. She summons Sylphiad once more, and starts to fend it off with some wind slashes. She manages to get in a single good hit, but that's all she's good for, and with this naturally tough hide, most attacks aren't going to do anything to it, and earth magic and wind aren't strong enough. It starts to ready its hoof for a charge, and she realizes it's coming in for an attack. As it does so, it starts flinching in fear, as Rudd's screaming, using his roar of terror, one of his first abilities. He starts to stand back up, and he says that it needs to pay him back for his food. He won't be able to use charge or harden for some time, so if he lets this drag on too long, it might target back onto Alicia. He doesn't have any skill strong enough to finish it in one shot, but by the looks of it, it's a one-trick pony with its charge, and while he didn't get to practice it, he's more than ready to give it a try. As the monster starts to charge in towards him, Alicia asks what he's doing, but he's focusing on drawing the corruption into his body and channeling it into his blade. As the boss gets closer and closer, he opens his eyes widely before stomping, slashing all the way through the pig, splitting it completely down the middle. Alicia is speechless. As the monster is cleaved completely in two, so is tons of the terrain behind him. She says that she can't believe he pulled that off in the heat of battle without practice. He says he had a hunch it would work, but he thinks his essence pool just hit empty. On cue, his sword also shatters into pieces, and she's surprised and so is he as he starts screaming about it. He says that he's used it for a long time, but still. She says maybe it couldn't withstand the amount of essence poured into it, and before an adventure a weapon is like an extension of themselves, so she can imagine the shock. She decides they should call it quits for today, and he says he agrees, but he wants to eat some of this thing. It takes us to the 7th floor of the noxious labyrinth as we see the adventurers who are messing with Rudd at the start and they are struggling to kill a king plague rat. Fat Ass charges into it and the warrior guy comes in from the side and cuts it down, comes over from the side and deals the final blow. And the mage sighs out of relief, saying that sure was a tough fight and they all agree that there's no way they could lose together. He needs to lose some weight, damn. While they're distracted something creeps up behind and the knight turns. The mage asks what's up and he walks over saying that he thought he heard something. Fat Ass says that he didn't know there were stairs here and they wonder if maybe it's a secret entrance. When they get down to the bottom they're all stunned by what they see as a hidden chest. The knight says that he doesn't think there are any traps here and they wonder what it will be. They pull it out and it's a sword. The knight says that he can feel mana coming off the blade and it should fetch for a good price on the market. Fat Ass says hopefully it's not a cursed weapon. We finally learn his name but I'm not learning it. The mage says to think about it, they haven't run into Rudd for some time now and they've been struggling with no easy way to make some money. It could be the reward Lady Luck is giving them and since they've been hunting for so long it's about time they hit the jackpot. Fat Ass says that since they were on the subject he heard that he formed a party with a pretty elf. The knight says that he's out of leagues and clueless about it and the mage agrees saying the next time they run into him they'll show him a thing or two about where he belongs. Fat Ass though stares at the chest still worried about the fact that it could be a cursed weapon and it's a valid worry because that's exactly what it is. Back to Verona. Rudd says that he needs a new main weapon so he's gonna drop by a weapon vendor. He heads into the Iron Hammer which is run by an old man named Doim. He's staring at the sword saying that to think that a sword he made would break like this, and she wouldn't shatter in this manner just from brute force alone, asking him what exactly he did to his baby. Alicia asks if he's going to tell him and Rudd says he's gonna tell him the truth. He's known Doim for a long time and he's not the type to blabber about his secrets. Doim starts taking in all the information and says that explains his sudden jump in strength since the last time they spoke. Alicia says that he doesn't seem surprised at all and Doim says that he doesn't concern himself with what others choose to eat and if it's good for them then all the power to him but he needs a blade that can withstand any attack confused with essence so he's going to need some time to research this but it won't be anytime soon. Rudd asks if there are any special materials he needs and Doim says that since he mentioned it a few high quality mana stones ought to help. Rudd says he's got quite a few of those already. He plops them onto the table. Doim recognizes them instantly. One's from the General Lizard, one's from Baphomet and the other of course is the Minotaur. Doim says that he truly has come a long way and Rudd says hearing that from him is something else. Doim tells him that he'll contact him if he needs anything else and in the meantime to take this blade. But before he lets go of it he tells him that he shouldn't even dare entertain the idea of putting his essence into it because if he breaks this sword he's going to give him one hell of an invoice for doing so. Rudd says he gets it and they head back to the inn. Alicia says that she supposes he won't get to use any essence-based attacks in the time being. He says that he definitely doesn't want to risk it as Doim gets very passionate when it comes to weapons and armor. She says that he just seemed like someone with charisma to spare and she's glad that Rudd has other friends besides her. He apologizes for being a loner and that's when the dudes from before make their way in, asking if they can join their table. This guy looks like he's tweaking on some fent. Rudd asks what these three want again and Alicia says that they have a problem with her party member and they should settle this like adventurers. The knight is actually tweaking on some fent because he falls straight over into another patron's table. The mage asks if he snuck a few shots in and pre-gamed it without them knowing and then tells him to wait a second as he thought he sold that blade earlier. He just keeps saying kill over and over and over. He hears the sword saying to kill over and over and over and he ties his grip on it and starts to go crazy telling it to shut up and he starts swinging at the mage and cuts him straight down in front of Fat Ass. He then turns directly towards Alicia and leaps at her. But Rudd steps in and blocks the attack saying that something tells him they won't be able to settle things over a few drinks this time around. Two of the other patrons ask how he's going to ruin their meal with this shit, and they charge at him. One of them grabs him from behind, and while he's still holding onto the sword, he swings, cutting the adventurers, causing them to fall to the floor. Alicia says she is sorry in advance to the tavern master, but this needs to be done, and she will help pay back for the wall, as she blasts her attack forward, hitting the knight in the side. The tavern master asks what's wrong with them as they're all watching, but she's more surprised to see him stand back up, and Rudd says maybe she took it too easy on him. She says she didn't, most adventurers wouldn't be able to get up after that. Even though he's wobbling, he then goes into a full-blown sprint straight at them. Rudd says that something is seriously wrong with him. Alicia then tells the other patrons that if they have healing magic to tend to the wounded quickly before it's too late. Rudd fends off the attack, and he's looking at the knight's stats. We learn that his name is Lond, and he is a level 22, but his status is berserking. Rudd says that he doesn't know what that means, but his stats are infinitely higher than what he remembers. Alicia then tells Rudd to dodge to his left, and he turns, seeing that she's preparing an attack. She says this time she'll give it to him good, as she launches out 3 attacks at the same time. Lond manages to block the first, at least he tries to, but it starts to seem as if it just vanishes. Alicia asks if the blade just absorbed her magic, and it starts to release a red aura. She then recognizes it, telling Rudd to be careful because that weapon is cursed. He says that since it absorbed her magic and powered up, this is going to be a lot more difficult. Lond leaps straight at him. Now as his arm begins to have tentacles wrapping around it, Rudd blocks the attack, but it's extremely heavy, and it starts pushing him downwards. Realizing that he can't win in a contest of strength, he allows it to scrape off the side of his blade, but he has no chance to even breathe, because Lond is putting him on the defensive permanently. Rudd though waits and buys his time until he sees an opening, and cuts his leg. But Rudd is surprised as the tentacles are closing the wound on his leg. Alicia says that if she attempts to help Rudd in a half-assed way, she's just going to end up feeding the sword more, and to help Rudd out, she needs to strike a single hit at the precise moment that his guard is dropped. Fatty yells, begging that they don't kill him, and that he knows that they did awful things to Rudd. To someone like him though, who was stuck in a rut only finding comfort in seeing this worse off than himself, his friends were the only ones who treated him as an equal, and it's shameless of him, but he begs that he please spare his life, and starts crying. Rudd says that he'll see what he can do, and that he's going to try using sacrifice on him, telling Alicia to leave it to him. She says okay, and Rudd says that it took about 10 seconds to use it last time, but the problem is now that he doesn't have 10 seconds to spare, and he needs to figure out the logistics of dealing with him while the curse is being lifted. A sudden attack comes in, hitting him on the side, and Alicia screams out for him, but Rudd manages to block it, and says that it feels like he's being charged by a horse, but he says this is good, and he wraps his legs around Lond's arm and the blade, and says that if he can keep the blade controlled, this will work. He then starts to activate a spell. As he's pulling Lond forward, he uses the wisdom of the earth, and he says that it won't be able to absorb any magic if he has the sword away from it. He starts grabbing onto Lond with all of his rock hands, and he says that if the cause of his berserking is a curse, then maybe he can return him to normal, just as he had done with Alicia. He starts to activate sacrifice, and puts his hand on his chest. The skill starts to fly out and starts to envelop Rudd, as Lond is begging him for help. Fatty starts crying and tears continue, and Lond's just begging. Rudd's definitely feeling it this time, as these ominous beings start to surround him. Eventually it's too much, and he gets sent flying backwards. Alicia runs over, and he says that he's okay, but he didn't actually get to use sacrifice all the way. His earth hand starts to crack, and he says what pushed away the skill wasn't Lond, but the sword's will. Maybe if he attacks the sword itself. He activates the Baphomet's attack and flies out towards Lond, as he breaks free of the earth hold. Rudd says that the binding snapped. This is bad, but it's not the worst case, because only the right arm is free, and he'll attack it from an angle his right arm can't reach. Of course, Lond's body contorts in an unnatural way, and this catches Rudd off guard, and he asks what the deal with that freakish movement was. Lond actually manages to block it, but not just that, he's absorbed the attack. And we see the eyeball open as if it was asleep the entire time, and Lond starts to let out a blood-curdling scream, and the aura is way more powerful than it was previously. Alicia says that this form is only one thing, and it has to be an incarnation. Rudd gets it and says that this is bad, as he uses incite on the floating monsterification, and it is called Grum the Two-Headed Abomination. Its levels is question marked, its race is cursed. Rudd says that this is no longer Lond's body. As Grum thrusts at his head, Rudd nearly dodges. In an instant, Grum contorts the body and returns with a kick, sending Rudd flying. Rudd says it's so fast, there's not a single wasted movement anymore, and it's like he's turning into a seasoned warrior. Grum gets behind him, and when Rudd turns, he realizes that he won't be able to dodge this attack. Alicia flies in, rotating her body by using mana, and kicks it in the side. Grum though uses his tail to stand upright, but since she no longer needs to hold back, Alicia channels her staff and shoots out an attack at point-blank range, sending Grum flying into a nearby wall. She asks if it's okay for her to join now. Rudd says of course, and that he didn't know she was this well versed in close combat. She says that a mage who can't do that is dead weight to the party, but more importantly, they can't go easy on him anymore, and he better steel himself, as once a curse has progressed to this stage, the only way to stop it is to cut out the vessel's heart. Rudd said he was really hoping he didn't have to hear that, but he'll do it. The mages tell Fatty and the other one that the healing's not done yet, and the mage says that surely he heard what the elf said just now. As Rudd and Alicia are fighting, Rudd says that even with the two of them, they can't land a decisive blow. And he wonders if it has a wider field of vision thanks to his two heads. He says if that's the case, she needs to create some distance from it right now. She does so, and he puts his hand on the ground, as this time the spells are coming from the floor. She says she understands. And while the dust may be born from the magic, it's not magic itself, which means the curse can't absorb it. Rudd then charges forward, but Grum cuts him down. We see it was none other than a rock silhouette, as he's now behind Grum, slicing across its back. Grum turns to counter, but Alicia takes this chance to use another summon spell, and we see her summon this time is called Nomia. She shoots out an earth lance that barely misses the heart, and she says that she can't believe she missed, and it was by nothing but a hair's thread. Grum then launches an attack straight towards her head, and Fatty charges in, grabbing onto the arm. Rudd is just confused, and Fatty says that if someone has to kill him to end this madness, then it's best for his friends to do it. As the mage charges in with the sword, he pierces Lon's heart. If you've watched till the end, comment, bonk, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.